Hi everyone, and welcome back to this channel, Financial Wealth Community. I'm Ashley Stewart, your host on this channel. So we are celebrating Movember, which globally it is November, and it is the month to celebrate men's mental health. Now I have with me today a very special guest. His name is Ashley Stewart, and he also happens to be my eldest child. Welcome, Ashley.
Thank you very much.
So as it's men's mental health, we're going to be talking about, in this episode, I'm going to give you an introduction to Ashley's journey, and we're kind of looking at it from a financial perspective and how it affects men's mental health. So Ashley, tell me, first of all, what was your first introduction to finances?
So I'd say my first introduction was when I got my first part-time job at the age of 17.
Yes.
So while I was in sixth form, I managed to secure a part-time job, partly also because I got my first car around the same time as well, so I needed to make sure I was able to maintain that. So yeah, that was my first introduction. So I was obviously earning money, and like I said, with the car, I've now got bills that I need to make sure I'm paying and making sure I don't have any issues with credit in the future. Obviously down to you educating me on all of that sort of stuff.
Yes, I did.
So yeah, it was mainly to do with making sure I can maintain my payments for my car, and also I think I had a phone contract that time as well. So yeah, I just had to make sure I had a budget, which is what you introduced.
I was just about to ask you, how did you manage that? And you said my favourite word, which is
budgeting.
Right, so how did you manage your budget? What did you do? What's the practicalities of how you did that?
It's just a basic spreadsheet. That's the basics of it. Just having an Excel spreadsheet, or Google Sheets as they call it now sometimes, and just jotting down all my incomings and all my outgoings and making sure that it balances out. And yeah, that's the basic introduction to what I had done to manage my finances.
So I hope you're taking note, guys. That was from the age of 17. And do you still have a budget that you use now?
I do.
There you go. Okay, so let's talk about your journey. So obviously you got your part-time job. Obviously you went full-time at some point.
Yeah.
And so things don't always go right. So they don't always go to plan.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that.
So I think at the age of 21, I then got my first full-time job. So from 17 to 21, I was working like a 0-hour contract. So I was kind of working when I wanted to work. Sorry. And so yeah, at the age of 21, I kind of went to my first full-time job, doing an apprenticeship but working at the same time. I think at that age, I also, and I'm happy to admit this, I went and got a Mercedes that I probably shouldn't have got, looking back at it now, but at the time it's something I really wanted. I remember going to the showroom with you and Dad.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that a little bit more, because yes, I mean that wasn't your first car.
It wasn't my
fair.
No. That was my third car.
Yeah, your third car. And I remember us going to the Mercedes garage. Yes, me, Dad, and you. And I remember them saying how much the deposit was going to be. And I think I looked at you. I'm not sure if you remember that. And I was like, "Do you really need to have a Mercedes?" Do you remember that conversation?
Yeah, of course I remember it. I think at that time, because we kind of just said that we're going to go and just have a look at and see if it is within the budget. But I remember the guy, and obviously he was a good salesman. There was this particular car, and I think it was almost like limited edition. And it had all of the kind of perks and everything to it. And I just, as soon as he showed me that, my eyes just lit up. And I couldn't get it out of my mind. So when we sat down and went through the numbers, I was just, in my head, I was just thinking, how can I make this work? And in my head, I was telling myself, it's going to motivate me to make more money. So that was my kind of positive spin on it. And I think that's kind of also how we ended up going through it.
Yeah, I think for me it was, I remember that clearly. And for me it was, I don't really want him to do this because it's a car, right? And then I was thinking about what you'd been through. So let's be real. So 16, 17, very difficult. 3 attempts, I think, or 4 of robberies on you.
Yeah.
And then you was also playing football at the same time in Kent. So you had the gangs where you had to be careful on the roads. But then playing football, you had the racists in Kent.
Yeah.
And I remember a particular time where I was really worried about your mental health. And I was thinking, so at that time when we were sitting there, I thought, do you know what? he deserves this. Let him have something he really wants because you had been through a lot. So I think that was my excuse anyway, and I'm sticking to it. But in reality, I thought this could be the only time maybe in your life, you know, you're working, you're living at home, where you'd be able to afford to make the payments and all the rest of it. So I thought, let him have it. And I guess it's a bit of that mummy thing, isn't it? Like she wants her son to be happy. So okay, fair enough. All right. So then you get your Mercedes car, and then what happened then?
So obviously I've got now an even bigger expense that I'm having to keep up with because I've done on like a finance agreement. So I've got monthly payments for that to keep up, the upkeep of the vehicle, and then everything else. So obviously, a 21-year-old wants to do, playing football, going out with my friends, going out for meals or going to clubs or whatever. Obviously, all of that stuff has to be funded. So I was obviously trying to maintain that lifestyle. And then obviously I got to the age of, I think it was 24, when I was, basically I found out my partner at the time was pregnant. So I had to move out pretty much ASAP to make sure that everything was set for when he arrived. That brought a whole nother dynamic to my life and finances and responsibility.
So here you are now, you've moved out, obviously, you know, you've got bigger responsibilities and everything. And I guess from a financial perspective, that's when things kind of took a turn. Because then at one point you was the sole bread.
Pretty much. And I remember before moving out, I think I sat down with you on that table there and we'd done like a budget of how realistic it is and how we're going to make it work and what I can move into and what we can't. Looking at those numbers, I remember feeling like, wow, this is going to be a struggle, like a real struggle, and I'm going to have to also do something to make sure that it can work and I can provide for my son, and obviously for us, because we was like you said, I was pretty much the sole bread winner. It was a lot of pressure in terms of knowing that I had to earn a certain amount of money, and there was all these new responsibilities and additions to the budget. So obviously like rent and utilities and food and all of this sort of stuff. And obviously at 24, looking back now at 24, that's still really young. So to take on all of that responsibility and have to overlook that was a lot.
Okay. So then, was that your first introduction to debt?
No, because I had an introduction to a credit card before that.
Okay.
Obviously, when living at home, it was fine because if I used it, I could just pay it off. Because my expenses at home weren't as much as what they would go on to be. So as soon as I moved out, having a credit card. And then accumulating debt, and then realising at the end of the month I can't really pay all of this off.
You were using the credit card for your daily living, pretty much, right? At the time, basically, that's what it came down to. Yeah. And actually, I hear that a lot. I do know a few people who, you know, and I see it myself. You know, you go into the supermarket and people are using their credit card to pay for their shopping. It's a reality for some people, right? So, and then that is the fastest way to kind of accumulate a lot of debt. Then now you can't pay it off every month. So you're also having the interest on top of that as well. Exactly. Okay, so how did that make you feel?
I just felt like I'm never gonna get out of this struggle. At one point, I just felt like, how am I ever gonna get out of this? Because I remember even when my son was born, on the day he was born, I was offered a new job. Okay. And I thought, that obviously I felt a real boost, and I thought, I'm going to be able to provide for him, I'm going to be able to do this and that. But obviously the reality hits when you look at your account and you've got all of these outgoings that you're going to have to legislate for, and then paying off a credit card at the same time that's accumulating interest. I just found myself every 6 months to a year just getting a new 0% credit card and just to make sure I don't have any interest to pay. But then it would get to the next 12 months and I'm having to do it again because I haven't been able to pay it off.
But the good thing is that you knew to put it onto a 0% interest card.
But that's obviously from the education I've had financially. But even with that education, it still doesn't mean that you can put it into practice in terms of actually being able to pay off what you need to pay off, because we all have our struggles and things that we go through where we may have to spend a bit extra money here and a bit extra money there, and it all gets on top of you really.
So then how did this start to impact you from a mental health perspective? Because then things happen, life happens, relationship breaks down, whatever. How did that impact your mental health going through all of that at the same time? So you've got debt, you know.
I think it's just it's pressure. A lot of it is to do with pressure, because you've got all of these bills that you have to pay for, and you're also worried about having any like sort of bad credit, because I obviously knew that having a bad credit history could affect me further down the line. So I needed to make sure that all of my bills were paid for. But then on the other end of things, I want to be able to live a life where I can enjoy it and I can do things that I enjoy, because in life you need a balance. You can work, but you need to be able to spend it and enjoy what you earn, basically. And it was getting to a point where I felt like I couldn't really do that. And there would be times every month where I'd just be using my credit card and buying things that I want with no actual plan of being able to pay it back. And that put me in a dark position. And obviously I've got, like I said, I've got the pressure of having to uphold a household, and it was really difficult.
So when you say dark, what does that mean?
It means being put in a position where you can't actually see the light. There's no light at the end of the tunnel. You can't see how you're going to get out of this. And that's not a nice place to be in, because you've especially at that age, I'm looking down and seeing a little toddler or baby looking up at me, and they're depending on me. Yeah. And I just need to do the best that I can to keep my head above the water.
Okay. So what we're going to do, we're going to have part 2. So we're going to come back and Ashley's going to tell us a bit more about his story and the steps that he took to try and get himself out of that situation. So thank you guys for watching. Remember to hit the notification bell so that you don't miss out on the next, on part 2 basically of this story next week. So remember, hit the notification button, share. It's November, which is Movember, and we are really talking about finances and men and how we can support our men to better manage their finances and to not get themselves in the dark place. Thank you guys for watching. Bye.